Okay, welcome. Jason Murphy, Rebel Dharma, Wednesday night. People are rolling in. Those of you in the room, welcome. Good to see you again. Those of you who haven't been here in a while. Those of you on the Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom that is new to the group that would like to introduce themselves, just saying who you are and where you're at, what brings you here? Okay. Guess we'll just move along.
Well, my name's Andy. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. I'm not necessarily new. I've been to this maybe once or twice, but I'm returning after a hiatus.
All right. Good to see you, Andy. Glad you made it.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Okay. And those of you in the room, we've known you before, seen you before. You're familiar what we do here. Yeah. So, I'm going to continue a theme of talking about precepts and what does that mean from a Buddhist perspective, these kind of training precepts, training agreements. And so we'll dive a little bit more. I gave kind of an overview and kind of I think I'll title last week's talk, Do No Harm, Take No Shit, that'll be my YouTube title, because that was kind of the theme, I think. And I'm going to expand a little bit more and talk a little bit more also from a scholarly perspective tonight about at least the first precept of no intentional killing or protecting life, and share some views and talk. Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. And since I think we're all pretty adept at meditation, does anyone feel like they would benefit from some instruction as far as guidance? You can raise your hand if you're in Zoom, or just kind of give me a sign. Yeah, during the meditation, like versus kind of sitting. You prefer a little guidance, versus kind of a absolutely silent, stuck with your mind only. Yeah. Okay. My voice, for some people, my voice will help to, or any guidance will help to kind of break up the kind of, oh yeah, this is what we're doing here, or the monotony of the everyday mind. And for others, it's totally annoying, especially if you're like a Zen practitioner or you're used to sitting alone by yourself, right? But okay, we'll add. I'll give a little bit of instruction, just kind of some simple guidance, mindfulness of the body and the breath. And we'll go with that. So finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable, one where you can feel relaxed and alert. There are other cushions that didn't get put out, but you guys can pull them out if you want to sit on the floor. You're welcome to. Right. So it's settling in. Arriving here. This breath. This sitting, breathing body. So the intention to establish mindfulness, to collect the attention here, now, this present time experience, constantly changing, ever moving, flux of moment to moment awareness. What's not changing? Thoughts, breath, sound, sensations. It's helpful to direct the attention toward a particular anchor or aspect of this present time experience, whether that be sound, or whether that be the breath, or whether that be the sensations in the body. Kind of de emphasizing the thinking mind for a time as we collect the attention, harnessing the power of mindfulness. Perhaps scanning through the body, head to feet, feet to head. Just awareness of the sensations here in this sitting, breathing body. Perhaps expanding the sensation awareness, body awareness, to the experience of breathing, felt here in the body. Expansion of the chest, the rise and fall of the belly, wherever is easiest to connect. The subtlety of the breath, warmth and coolness of the nostrils, opening to sound. The sensation of hearing. All inviting us again and again to rest here, to drop down from the thinking, planning mind and into the being and experiencing body. establishing and re-establishing mindfulness of this present time experience without judgment or criticism, just recognizing when the attention wanders off. And with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back. Sitting, breathing body. again and again, deepening, reestablishing this moment to moment awareness. There is a type of inquiry one can do. Now I'm aware of, and just let the answer arise. We don't have to go searching, just labeling. Now I'm aware of sound. Now I'm aware of sensation. Now I'm aware of breath. So on. That doesn't seem like a useful instruction. Just let it go. Each time you recognize that the attention has wandered off, just recommit, reestablish mindfulness, awareness, present time, breath, body, sound. Again and again. All right. I remember when I was new to meditation and I just considered it always a success if I didn't get up and leave the room when I was at a meditation group. Like that was a success. Like whatever else happened in my mind, in my body, following the breath, not following the breath, I was just like, oh well, at least I didn't leave. So I didn't get up and storm out, because sometimes that's what was happening in my mind. Like, this is stupid. You should just leave. And I didn't. So if you didn't check out, meaning you didn't stop, you stayed in the room, success. All right, we're going to do I'm going to talk for a minute or two, just present a topic, and then we're going to break into some small groups and talk to each other. So I've been talking about the precepts, and I want to just read the precepts. This is a slightly different format than last week, but they're still the basic precepts. Mostly what I'll be reading from today, when I am reading things that are not my own thoughts, is from Bhikkhu Bodhi and from the book Words of the Buddha, which is kind of like the practical guide for lay practitioners. In other words, people that still are hopeful to get laid, perhaps. Or householders is another way, non-monastics. All right, so virtuous actions, so this is from Bhikkhu Bodhi. Virtuous actions spring from three wholesome roots of non-attachment, goodwill, and wisdom. By taking precepts, one practices to regulate one's conduct in accordance with these three virtuous qualities. Those virtuous qualities, again, non-attachment, goodwill, wisdom. So the idea here is to cultivate non-attachment, goodwill, and wisdom through the observance or the practice of the five precepts. Five precepts are as follows: to abstain from killing living beings, to abstain from taking what is not given or freely offered, i.e. stealing. I'm sorry, not to obtain, to abstain. I need new lenses. And to abstain from sexual misconduct, to abstain from false speech, to abstain from intoxicants and harmful drugs. I guess I'll read this last little piece too. Following the five precepts also implies avoiding the five kinds of occupation forbidden to a lay Buddhist: trading in arms, trading in human beings, i.e. including slavery and or prostitution, in flesh, i.e. breeding animals or slaughter of animals, in intoxicants, and in poisons. So these are considered the five kinds of occupations forbidden or, strongly discouraged. So I will stop there, and let's just turn to each other. And I guess the idea here is, what do you think about that? Like, just what I've been reading about the idea of kind of following precepts. Which ones seem like they're easy to do? Which ones are easier to follow? Which ones are more difficult? Is there one that is absolutely challenging for you? And so let's get into groups of three. And if you last week were in a group with three people that you were sitting close to you, just try to mix it up a little bit. And then we'll come back in like 3 minutes, okay? For those of you online. And Shannon will put you in. Please go to the group if your camera is awake. If your camera is alive.
You want to join us? Sure. Yes, I can start. I think the
And we're back. Sometimes I feel like I'm a game show host. And we're back. The Price is Right. Find your own salvation. Spin the wheel. Perhaps. Okay, so I don't know. I guess I'm kind of curious. Did anything come up for people in the groups? What was discussed? Not please talk about your own experience, either in the meditation. Obviously, also if you have any questions about the meditation or the practice, and if there was any fruitful discussion for you about these ethical integrity training precepts. Please.
So specifically for the conversation, I got to a place where I realized, based on what you had mentioned last week about we all have to figure out our own salvation, and the 5 precepts are a framework for this. That really resonated with me because when I think about the 5 precepts, I think the one that I have maybe in my mind struggled with the most has been the intoxicants. And what I realized just tonight, which I'm proud of, is that it's not so much because the 5 precepts have told me not to do it that I have slowly stopped doing, specifically drinking. But it's actually as a result of the deepening of this practice and becoming more self-aware and mindful of my body, of my thoughts, of my feelings, and my emotions, that I've realized the negative effects that it has on me, and therefore have not been as interested in doing it. So it hasn't just been like this, the precepts say not to do it, and therefore I'm not doing it. Or I really want to, but I can't. It's genuinely like a process of my body has begun rejecting it because I know that I feel really like I've noticed my depression after, the day after, the morning after. And
takes a toll.
Exactly.
It interrupts. This is where the term clouds of the mind kind of comes into play. Not that it's gonna kill you or it's the worst thing, but that it clouds the mind. It shifts the orientation, the kind of harmony with the body.
Yeah. So as much as
crack, we're talking about crack. Yes.
Other elements, like I brought up that I really enjoy psychedelics, and that has been that's actually been something that I've gotten benefit from over the last couple of years. Like my spiritual experience. But drinking specifically is where I'm like realizing I don't, this doesn't serve me, and those are the things I'm starting to let go of. So like that's kind of how I've gotten on this path.
Yeah.
My own salvation is by deepening my practice.
Thank you. And yeah, so those of you on Zoom could hear what was being said, kind of. I'll just kind of give a synopsis. She shared, just talking more about the understanding of, at first kind of seeing the precept of not taking intoxicants or harmful drugs as a, like there was that's been one that was challenging, and then through the, her own practice and her own kind of choice and gaining in sensitivity of her practice, really being able to kind of let go or change her relationship with that substance. Yeah. And then something about how mushrooms are really good and you should take more of them. And it's interesting, right? Clouds the mind. Well, do mushrooms cloud the mind? I don't know. Some people in particularly American Buddhism have gone a little off of, let's reinterpret that to mean something that uh, allows for psychedelic experiences. And, I mean, Ram Dass, famously is one of that, every acid head and mushroom head I've ever kind of psychedelic person I've ever kind of come into contact with that has this debate with me is like, well, what about Ram Dass and, the Beatles? And yeah, well, first of all, that was like I mean, the mushrooms were the same, but I don't know. The reality is that, sure, super helpful for some to enter in to the path, onto the path, and can provide a peak experience that I think can aim people to that's, when I was in my teens and doing psychedelics, I had some meditative experiences, and what I have found is that I have come to those same and beyond those same experiences without the use of substances. So what that tells me is that the mind's potential is already there. That potential for that kind of shift is present, and that in some ways, taking acid is just cheating. But people have to figure it out for themselves. And some people can have a healthy relationship with drugs and alcohol. I'm not one of those people. And I think a lot of people that come to this group or that come to Buddhism maybe actually have a very unhealthy relationship. And we have to see that for ourselves. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Did I give it the synopsis good? My own twists and interpretations.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you can say was more so that it's less about like do not do these things, not feeling guilty about it or shame about it. More so that through my like meditative practice, through the principles that I'm learning, that it just has been almost like a rejection of it.
Yeah. Okay. So that and I mean, perhaps even the frame, because it can come off as moralistic and, you either do this or don't do this. And even the precepts, and I've talked about this, and this is a little bit what I was kind of going to talk about last week too, this week. But the really the view of the precepts from the Buddhist perspective are, can we come into harmony with the Dharma? That it's not, don't do this or you're bad, and if you do this, you're good, or whatever, right? If you do this, you're bad, and if you don't do this, or if you do this, you're good. It's not. That's not the orientation of Buddhism. So that was helpful. Anyone else? Please.
That was a really insightful distinction. Appreciate that. I was thinking about that concept, something that Brian brought up when we were talking in our group about the right speech. Something I've been noticing over the past month is just a sort of shift. My friends, like every morning, love reading up for coffee and just gossiping, talking shit, and just very crass, like tasteless jokes, and it's like vitamins, I don't know, or has been for a long time, and I've been sort of noticing just lately this kind of icky feeling of too low even, or this doesn't make me feel great. But I appreciate that distinction that you brought up, because I haven't really considered that. But in the past, it's been like, don't do that because from a moralistic standpoint, or it says in the thing, you don't. And then feeling guilt and shame over it, and not just sort of understanding it more through the experience of it, being mindful and aware detaching from it rather than, just segregate. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And finding the way to integrate instead of, kind of compartmentalize these aspects.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because growing up, I
Or
was raised on,
tendencies or habits. Yeah.
like I was raised on like G.G. Allen and Dorothy Parker. Like kind of the same person in a lot of ways. And so like say the sharpest, gnarliest things like a pride.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like something. It's like letting go of that. It's like, oh, there's like a,
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it is. Precepts are not commandments. They are training precepts or training principles, and they're just like we're trying to remind ourselves again and again. The word sati, mindfulness, means to remember, to remind ourselves to come back. Oh, here. Oh, here. Oh, wise speech. Oh, wise relationship to intoxicants. Oh, non-killing. That seems like a no-brainer, but there's some nuance to that. That means the mosquito and the cockroach and the ants, the flies.
So are you supposed to deal with like insects in general in your house? Like, what is right?
Yeah, the question was about insects, since I brought it up, right? I knew that was coming. I have a good friend of mine. She's a Dharma teacher. She's my good friend, Stephanie. And she, when we were in kind of teacher training, she called me up. She had bought a house, and she called me up, and she said, I have a beehive in my chimney. And what should I do? What do you think? What do you feel like the Buddhist approach to removing these bees from my home, which was kind of their home before she bought the house, So it was like, And we had some conversation, we did some research, and she found a non-harmful bee removal company that came and wore their suit. They took the hive out. The bees kind of scattered, and then they put the hive somewhere, and then the bees, I think they sucked them up with like a vacuum, like a tube, like a shop vac or something, but it went into a bag or whatever. So as the least harm possible, removed these bees. Right. I was. I remember that story years later because I just remember how much care she put into it, how much thought she put into it, how she reached out for support around like, what do you feel like the best kind of ethical way to deal with this is? I can't coexist with these bees in my house. And if I start a fire, they're going to get smoked out. They're going to get agitated. They're going to attack, swarm, harm the dog, And so that was what we came up with. Now, having said that, my last place of residence, I had a cockroach infestation. It started with one or two little baby cockroaches, and I was like, all right, like this is a problem, but maybe. And then they spread quickly. I called an exterminator. The exterminator came and, exterminated the cockroaches. So I intentionally killed hundreds, maybe thousands of cockroaches. And what's the implication there? The implication is there is a karmic implication to that action. And I had to be willing to take on that karmic implication. And that's really all that the precepts are saying is, look, these are, over here is, riddled with suffering, and over here is freedom from suffering. And the precepts are one aspect of how you're going to get there. And to the degree in which you follow each precept or all of the precepts, and the Buddha gave lay people, householders, 5 simple ones to start with. Then it goes to 8, then it goes to 10, and if you're a full renunciate, a monk or a nun, it's like 331 precepts, training principles. And what is the purpose of precepts in the first place? To protect our minds, to align ourselves with what's called the Dharma, truth, the reality of things, to bring our minds and our habits and our behaviors in alignment with with harmony found in the truth in nature, or what would be called the Dharma. And so when we get to even in those psychedelic states, when we get, what does the psychedelic state reveal? Oneness, unobstructed view, temporarily, not sustainable. So anyway, that's kind of this overall view of kind of why are the precepts there. There's more I want to say about that, but Rachel had a question or a comment or a speak up. Speak up.
It feels so in the past now. It was just I too am somebody who cannot have a safe and sane relationship with intoxicants. So the 5th precept for me over the years has evolved into if I'm just an awareness of like, when I start having the thought, like, if I only had X, then I would feel Y or whatever. And basically, and Michael and I were kind of talking about this, like I can like flirting, shopping, coffee, sugar, like anything, like now the question is more like, am I trying to avoid feeling what I'm feeling? Am I trying to avoid whatever? Like if I'm uncomfortable and start obsessing about, getting attention or buying better running shoes, or like, then I like taking myself out of, I'm trying to escape. And that's not, obviously that's not for everybody, but that's just where the 5th precept has sort of evolved over the years for me, is just like, it's not just about getting fucked up anymore. It's about like, I'm clouding my channel, or I'm taking myself out of reality, like for whatever, it's usually because I'm fucking uncomfortable. But, and then the same thing with the precept about stealing, that gets into like creating financial wreckage for me, like using, racking up credit card bills, borrowing money for shit that I don't need. Like, it's just kind of like that woman was saying earlier, like, it's not an I'm going to hell thing. It's just like, I am becoming increasingly less comfortable with creating this kind of wreckage, and following these precepts has sort of, the definition has sort of expanded. So anyway, that was like 3 subjects ago. So sorry.
No, it's fine. It's all the same. And I think you gave, everything that's been shared, it's about attuning to what's happening in our experience. And if drinking or substance use or behavior is blocking or obstructing or hindering our openness or our, I'm trying to avoid using new agey phrases because this is where we get into this kind of vibrational kind of flow, all that kind of stuff. But it's true. That's Dharma. It's all Dharma. Then, renouncing that which is in the way. What is renunciation? To unclutter, to unentangle, So whether it's substances or whether it's, taking that which is not offered. I was this total kleptomaniac, by the way. I used to steal everything. I thought everything that I wanted, I thought I deserved it somehow. Until I wasn't in alignment with that anymore. Okay. And what else? So I want to just get to this other piece around, the precepts are considered they're really considered the second rung of training from the Buddha. The first rung, bottom rung, to reduce suffering in your life, be generous. Act in generous ways. Learn to unobstruct the heart by learning to be generous with time, generous with attention, generous with service, generous with money, generous, what does it mean to cultivate a generous heart? Bottom line. Quick story. In India, I'd been there felt like forever, probably like 3 weeks. And I get on a train in just south of Dharamsala, so then almost northern, kind of close to, closer to the Tibet and McLeod Ganj. Dharamsala is, I was seeing His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Anyway, I get on a train. I'm trying to go all the way down to Benares and just this a long way. It was like a 3-day train ride. Decent train, It's got sleepers and they're like bunk beds. And the day you pull, if you're on the top bunk, you put your bunk down and then it becomes like a little seat and then there's another seat over here and and it's all open and that's like your little area. So I get on and, for that first night and morning, I have my own little area, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got my own little area, kind of have my bag locked up so that no one could steal it when I'm sleeping because that stuff happens. And I'm just like, in my vibe, just saw the Dalai Lama. I'm all kind of saw a friend of mine and it was such an amazing experience. And then the next morning, this family gets on, this Indian family of, I don't know, 27 friggin' people. I have no idea how many people there were, but they had the other 2, maybe 3 sleepers in my little area, right? It was only it was a mother and a father and, a few kids, right? So it was only like 4 or 5 people. And I retracted in this way of don't violate my space, and I kind of retracted, read into my book, and they were just so generous, they started first the little kid was kind of curious and coming over, and then slowly the little bit older kid, and then the parents, and they could see that I was uncomfortable and they kind of were being generous with being respecting my space or whatever. And then anyway, by the end, they were feeding me food. And because I started to kind of open to the possibility of connection, right? And they came on, I came onto the train with a bag and a book, they came on a train with 5 meals and, all of their stuff. They were visiting family and I found out everything about their family. And, by the end, they were inviting me to their family's home, and it was just so beautiful. Um, so that level of generosity, it's just so palatable, right? When you can really experience it, when you're open to it. So that's super important. First rung. I felt like that was like one. There's been many of those experiences in my travels and here in the States too. Second rung is Sila. Sila is these training principles. Sila means harmlessness. Well, really, actually, it kind of means ethical integrity. The word ahimsa means harmlessness. And so, why do we train in precepts? To relieve the tension and the obstruction in our minds caused by all of like the karmic implication, the samkaras, the entanglements from killing, stealing, lying, having guilt and shame about sexual kind of misconduct, and the kind of the implications around using drugs and drinking that cause harm and to self and others, and actually avoiding using substances to numb out and avoid reality when reality seems too painful. The reason that we begin to, and the reason why for many people meditation is difficult in the very beginning, and it was for me, because once we start to slow it down, all that shit comes up. All the repression, all of the everything that we've been habitually compartmentalizing as a survival strategy begins to pop up. And then what are we doing? So Sila, and then Samadhi, right? Samadhi means kind of concentrated mind. Concentration really basically it's encapsulated with concentration and mindfulness, the development of meditation. After generosity, after precepts, after like kind of cleaning out some of the clutter, I'm going to learn to start to act in a way that is going to open my heart and my mind and be more receptive to the reality of things. Then begin to meditate. And the wounds are still going to come up. The wounds of the mind are still present and can be for the rest of your life. But your hold on them, or I should say their hold on you, becomes less over time. And actually, we begin to change our relationship, just like we might change our relationship to drugs or to, dishonesty or to stealing, to killing. And then these are called the three baskets. The third basket, the first basket being Sila, right? Ethical integrity. The second basket being Samadhi, or meditative training. The third basket being Panya, which means wisdom. The development and cultivation of wisdom, which is, kind of what we're trying to do here, right? But you can't just jump to wisdom, right? People want to. This is where reading thousands of books comes into play. If I read 1,000 books, but I don't meditate a day, how much wisdom do I actually have? I may have a lot of knowledge, but how much wisdom has been gained? From the Buddhist perspective, wisdom is knowledge and experience together. Wisdom arises. So hence just, I guess, some kind of deeper meaning and understanding of precepts. so interesting when I set out to talk about one particular aspect, and then, you know. All right, I'm going to read a little bit more from Bhikkhu Bodhi. To observe the precepts conscientiously in one's daily life brings a simultaneous growth in mental purity, skillfulness, and wisdom. Refraining from killing, for example, increases compassion and loving kindness for all living beings, two of the sublime attitudes. Right? So now he's starting to talk about what are the benefits of following these precepts. So, you know, non-killing increases compassion and loving kindness for all living beings, even cockroaches. Honesty gives courage, generosity, and a love of justice. I don't know about that love of justice, but I think actually the bottom line of like justice, what does it mean versus how we interpret it? You know, I have a whole thing about this and living in America, which I'll get to. Maybe. Sexual restraint or sexual, restraint of, well, restraint is what he wrote, and I was going to try to edit the word, but sexual restraint results in physical strength, vitality, and keenness of the senses, which having taken some time being celibate, I could say that, yeah. And there's a whole thing, especially in Taoism and in Hinduism, around kind of increasing vitality by restraining one's sexual energy, which is challenging and painful and can be really very useful. To learn to subdue the desire, the libidinal desires, cravings, can be really useful. You know, I want to just talk about the other side of that, because I've also known folks, and I found this a little bit myself when I did a year of celibacy. And I found that subduing desire to such a degree where I didn't want it to enter my mind or my dreams, it was hard to access again. It was like it got buried. And then it took, and I've seen this with people that I know that have been monks for a long time, and then coming back into the world and like trying to date, and like, you think it's awkward now. Like, think about if you were a monk for several years and were learning to subdue your sexual desire. And that's not even for non-monastics, really. I mean, that the training for me was around training as a teacher and really looking at my relationship to sex and sexuality and desire, craving, just like with drugs and other things, So anyway, I just wanted to kind of speak about that. But from the Buddhist perspective, the 5 precepts, it's not necessarily, it's about avoiding sexual misconduct, which means causing harm specifically, being manipulative, lying to gain sex, taking advantage of somebody, rape, manipulation, intoxicating somebody for the purpose of taking advantage of them, child molestation, cheating, these kinds of things. As a teacher, sleeping with a student. As a monk, sleeping with a sleeping with anyone as a monk, actually. But even like when I was in Thailand, like there would be this like kind of flirtation thing that happens, mostly it's men that are monks, and mostly it's women that are coming to, mostly it's women that, of course, I'm being heteronormative here, but that was mostly the experience. I also noticed that there were some kind of in the monastery, in the robes romanticism that was happening within an intimacy that was happening amongst men, which very well, could have had other implications. I didn't hang out much with the nuns, so, can't really speak on that. Anyway, truthfulness makes for uprightness. Uprightness, from the Buddhist perspective, means the ability to kind of sit in one's integrity, doing what one says and saying what one does, right? Living blamelessly and at ease is one of the ways it's talked about. To be truthful and to avoid, stealing allows one to live blamelessly and at ease. Really, all of the precepts allow one to live blamelessly and at ease, which that's a kind of a teaching from the Buddha and inspiration. May you live blamelessly and at ease. Avoiding intoxicants promotes clarity of mind. Mindfulness is essential to observing all the precepts, and one's constant effort to maintain the precepts in turn issues in an increase in clarity of mindfulness. I'll read this last little bit and then we'll have to end. The habitual practice of the 5 precepts leads to increased self-control and strength of character. The mind that succeeds in controlling desire, even to a slightest degree, gains in power. And this, when we're talking about desire here, desire is a force. It's very real, like electricity. When desire is unchecked, allowed to run riot, it expends itself into the pursuit of things that are harmful to oneself and others. And I feel like this is the kind of, self-will run riot. You ever heard that? Self-will run riot is what's said a lot in kind of 12-step groups. And I feel like it's that kind of the id from the psychological perspective of just the libidinal desires unchecked. The ego and the superego are working to kind of check, actually really more the superego is working to kind of check the id. The id just wants to fight and fuck and eat, and sleep. Very kind of animalistic, right? And we all have that within us. And the ego is kind of like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, do that. Fight and fuck and kill. Woohoo, let's party. Mara. That's what we call Mara. The egoic mind. The superego is this dharmic, like the Buddha nature that we all also have within us, which can be also kind of a societal norm. Anyway, we're out of time. We'll talk more about this stuff. Although not with me, because for the next 2 weeks I'll be away. But Ward Robinson will be here live in person. Great guy, trained with us, been a teacher for a while. He teaches a group on Friday night, mostly online. He'll be here both for you at home and for you in the room. So please show up. Please support him, and I'll let him know what I've been talking about, and then you'll get a different perspective on the precepts. And that can actually be really good. It's good to hear different views. Hopefully, so we're not just making this shit up. All right, so you may know that there's you can donate to this center. You can also donate to me. You can support me as a teacher through Venmo, either my name, Jason Murphy, or No BS Buddhist. Same thing with PayPal, Jason Murphy. And there's a bowl and there's a little QR code. I should actually just get my QR code to have out here. If you want to, make offering of cash. All right. Sorry, we went a little bit over a few minutes. I appreciate your time and attention and what good conversation. Hopefully this was helpful for you. All right. May any goodness that's been gathered, any goodness that's been cultivated by our practice, may this goodness be dedicated to the freedom from suffering for all beings everywhere. May we all be free.